And Schreiber opens by walking us into a quiet kitchen, the morning light spilling across her notebook. She pauses, pen hovering, remembering the moment she realized half a marriage had dissolved, one that had spanned over 2 decades. In that stillness, grief and clarity collided. She understood that the identity she'd built around roles and routines had collapsed, and in its place was a blank page begging for reinvention. That moment became her invitation to rebuild life from scratch, starting within herself. Early in the narrative, she revisits miscarriage and health crises, storms she thought would break her. The pain is described with unvarnished honesty, each setback depicted not as tragedy alone, but as a portal into deeper reflection. We walk beside her through hospital corridors, late-night hospital room prayers, shattering losses. Yet in those moments, there's a slow gathering of resilience, a reclamation of self that becomes both compass and healing balm. Her storytelling anchors deeply in shared ordinariness. She reflects on being a mom to a child who nearly slipped away to mysterious illness, then surviving. She captures those nights spent pacing hallways, hands clasped, trembling with fear and resolve. When her child recovered, she realized reinforcement didn't come from heroics but from showing up again and again. That continuity of presence was the foundation of her reinvention. As she moves through the chapters, Schreiber becomes both narrator and guide. She doesn't list steps but shows how she internalized lessons through real-life pivot points. When her marriage ended, she didn't escape into distraction, she cleared her desk at work, unsubscribed from routines that weighed her down, and reoriented daily life toward meaning. Her reinvention begins in those small acts that breathe fresh intention into once familiar rhythms. The book invites readers into the most delicate parts of her emotional architecture. Fears that whispered she'd failed at life itself. She describes whispering that fear a cup of tea at a time, admitting it, naming it. Then she slowly leaned into kindness, to herself, to her heart. She writes of journaling prompts woven into her narrative, not as demands, but as compassionate companions, questions that ripple outward. What values have survived? What traditions can you ritualize to reclaim agency? Within family gatherings, Schreiber depicts conversations reborn from trauma, how talking openly about divorce and illness with adult children reshaped relationships. She shows how vulnerability remodeled roles, her children stopped tiptoeing around grief, instead, they talked, they listened, they loved more transparently. That emotional recalibration became a catalyst for healing fermentation, not faux strength, but real connection. She reflects on the professional realm too. She'd been in marketing and sales, confident in her work until she felt disillusioned by performance without purpose. She began writing in late evenings, rediscovering the power of authentic voice. Marketing turned into memoir, copywriting into honest storytelling. She dared to reframe business failure not as defeat but as material for deeper purpose. Readers travel with her to workshops she hosted, where she encouraged others to name their losses out loud. There's a scene where one attendee, trembling, speaks of infertility, another shares the shock of job loss. Schreiber doesn't offer platitudes, she bears witness, encouraging the group to hold both pain and possibility. In doing so she illustrates that reinvention doesn't happen in isolation, it thrives in shared presence. Throughout the narrative, there's no promise of instant rebirth. The story moves at the pace of real life. Months of plateau, days of tedium, unexpected rebound moments that feel miraculous afterward. She recounts returning to Peloton rides, long walks with a basset hound, routines that tether her to wellness. She writes that these anchors of habit became gentle scaffolding beneath fragile ambition. A recurring metaphor emerges: reinvention is like gardening. The seed of identity must lie dormant in winter, even when it seems gone. But each intentional action, each conversation, each morning spent writing or walking, is sunlight coaxing life to break through. Her narrative follows seasons, years of loss, months of recalibration, small blooms of insight. Her prose holds terse honesty, even when she admits nights spent yearning for how things once were, or wondering if she'd lost too much time. She doesn't sugarcoat emotional setbacks. Instead, she shows how tears led to clarity, and confusion bred fresh questions. That vulnerability becomes lesson. Reinvention isn't polished. It's patchwork, made of sorrow and curiosity and the slow forging of self-trust. There is tenderness in how she re-enters love later in life, not necessarily romantic, but love of self. She writes about taking her first solo trip in years, walking unfamiliar city streets, buying fresh coffee, listening to silence. She realized that identity isn't defined by relationships but by the courage to stand, alone if needed, clear on who you are becoming. In the final pages, Schreiber circles back to that kitchen table opening. Now she returns with different vision, pen poised not in fear, but in anticipation. She reflects how perseverance doesn't demand hardening, it demands persistence born of compassion. Reinvention doesn't cancel grief, it transforms loss into fuel for withstanding next season. What remains is not motivational slogan, but emotional resonance. Perseverance is a lived rhythm, reinvention a patient art. Her story stays with you in mid-December evenings, in moments when you feel unmoored. Her example becomes invitation, to stay present while everything changes, to choose small acts of alignment, to gather meaning even when life breaks apart. By the close, Schreiber doesn't ask the reader to be someone else. She challenges them to rediscover themselves. She invites you to dare another start, not heroic, but human. Not overnight, but day by day. Reinvention emerges not from erasing the past, but from weaving pain into purpose.